great to see the support. This is our third talk. We're fortunate with Paul Conlon to the first, Martin Curley to the second, and very fortunate now that Martin's going to do the third talk, which we've never personally met Martin before this, but I've heard a lot in what he's done and his passion for it, and equally how he's reconnected so many people using both modern technology and also doing a deep dive through the records. I'd also like to thank James Donoghue for recording this. As so many has, I suppose, talked in the past, you wish that you listened to your relations, your grandparents and all that, so we're hoping by recording all these for the next generations to be there forevermore. So without further ado, I'd really like to thank Martin for coming, and I'll hand it over to him.
Garma, thanks to Farrell and to Matthew and all the committee involved in inviting me here. So my name is Martin Curley, and just a little bit about me. I'm from a small place you probably haven't heard about called Skahena. I don't know if you've heard of it. Just check your ankles once or twice. There might be a little bit of a bruise left over from that. So it's good to be here, and the talk tonight is on using DNA to reconnect the lost branches of the family tree. So I'm going to just say where we are for those who are watching in. Are going to do that. So the star there is where we are right now. So we're in a few different civil parishes: Killine, we got Killorn, we got Killisolin, and all of them have the word kill in it because they were churches at one stage. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with and have been in Killorn graveyards, Killine graveyard, and Killisolin graveyards, and that was the ancient Irish Gaelic monasteries of the time, and many of our families descend and stay there. So this is a little bit of a bird's eye view of what the place looks like today. Beautiful place. The river is the big thing, running right through that. So we're talking about a very farming area, and we're talking about the people here who have been doing this for generation after generation. So I'm going to just tell you what I do. I do a little bit of everything in terms of local history, and I've been very, very pleased to have worked with several of the local schools, fantastic schools like Ballinamore National School. I don't know, anyone has heard of a famous Ballinamore? Oh, Anne-Marie, didn't see you there, how you doing? And of course with Pia, I was in at Loan there a few years ago as well. So I work in schools, and I do workshops, and I help out people as well with their own DNA to help them reconnect. And I also do a little bit on Facebook, a small little bit on Facebook. So these are some of the schools that I have worked with over the last few years. Some of them I work with consistently, and some of them I work a small bit from time to time. I was saying to Farrell, tomorrow I'm going to be down in beautiful Fanor in County Clare, and then up on Wednesday I'm going up to beautiful Ballymote in County Sligo. So in between those two places, so I'll be working there. So I thought I'd just say a few things first to get us in the frame of this area. What's the local area? When we're talking about lost family, where did they come from? And especially the people in there. And then gonna just discuss a small bit about some of the causes that our families get disconnected. And of course, the big cause 175 years ago with Ungurtha Moor. And then just to see a little bit there on what are some resources that are available, so that way we can find a little bit of how to connect those, and then how we can use DNA to really reconnect with the long lost family. And then a few thoughts at the end. So the first thing is this local area, steeped in history, steeped in stories, and been mapped for quite a long time. So the map on the left is actually just flipped over 180 degrees on the right, because MacArthur, he wrote all the names of the places north to south, as opposed to east to west that we've known. So I picked out what I think, and I hope I am right in this, is Killine, or it looks a bit like Killine here, so that's the map there. And if you see on the map on the right, if you just go directly north, you see Gialia. So Giala O'Kelly, which is now modern day Castle Blakeney. And another O'Kelly stronghold, my law, just immediately there. And then maybe possibly Garbly, This is O'Kelly country. So the O'Kellys were the dominant peoples around here since the 700s. But of course, they came into other peoples that were here at that time, the Cruhan people, and this is 1,000 years after that. There's another map then that's a little bit more familiar to us, and this from 1790. See Killeen there again, Le Carrow and Killorn, Ballyglass. So a lot of the places have been here for centuries, our people have been here for centuries, and then huge changes. So this is from 1830s, and this is what Ballinamore looked like at that time. So you can see Curraboy Lodge across the way, so they built the lovely bridge there to kind of make sure that the peasants didn't have a nice view of them while they were out doing their whatevers. And you've got Riversdale House then to the south, and French's Acres, a lovely little townland of 20 acres. So Martin French and the French family would have been the proprietors at that time. So these are available online, obviously. So in terms of resources, the first thing is, where are they? To just kind of map and to look back at this and to see what has changed. For instance, the river there, as you can see on the right-hand side, there's quite a lot of flooding. There's quite a lot of little islands. And in the 170 years, 180 years since this map was done, there's been quite an amount of drainage schemes done over the years. So things have changed slightly. So the names of the places around here. Ballybourne, am I saying that right? Or Ballyban? Ballybourne. So Ballybourne, the white town. So Bourne in Irish, white. Bally. So Ballia could be a way, or a Ballia, which is a townland as well. But this is from the Galway Library website, a fantastic resource. But it tells you there in the description, Dennis H. Kelly is going to hold it for a deed forever. Well, not quite. It was only the 1860s that kind of like, doing that. But again, we're able to just see, and one of the things is, who's the landlord? Because a lot of connections are made via the landlord. So if you're working for one landlord, well, chances are that even if it's the other end of the parish, you might get married to somebody from that end, as opposed to if you're working for the Frenches, you may not kind of like connect as much. The next townland here, the Honourable Martin French's Acres, tiny little townland, and it says it's all under arable and pasture of a good quality. But we know that, this Ballinamore Bridge, we know it's good quality. Isn't that right, Hugh? It's good quality. We don't have to have somebody else telling us that. And then we have got Cartoon and Earla, the Earl's Quarter. And again, Dennis Kelly. And again, it just says a good state of cultivation. Cultivation there is going to be oats, it's going to be barley, it's going to be turnips, and of course it's going to be potatoes. So this is 1830s. The roads and houses are in good repair. Here's Dennis Kelly, make sure that you kept your houses in good repair. Otherwise, you might go to Ballinamore. So there's a lot going on here. And Curraboy, Honourable Martin French. So just knowing where your ancestors came from and the connections via the landlords is going to be important. Some of the places then are in English, like Newtown. Obviously there was a plan for a new town at some stage directly south of here. And again, Dennis Kelly holding that. And 15 acres of it is bog, the remainder arable and pasture. Riversdale, again, Dennis Kelly. So we can get a sense here that if you're in Kelly country and Dennis Kelly is your landlord, chances are your family has been established here for quite a few generations. So Charlestown at Ballinamore, and this is property of Lord French, but you can see Gonville French there, and John Cheevers are kind of like coming here. So these are going to be the main landlords of this area, as you're very familiar with. So in that, a sense of place. Who's the landlords 180 years ago? How did they connect with each other? Did your family move from one place to another at that time? Was it reasonable stability? And those families actually created quite an amount of stability. The Cheevers have been here since the 1650s. The Frenches have been here. They've come out of Monivea and they've been here a similar time. And you also have the Kellys here for quite a long time. So there's a sense of stability about where your families are right now and where they came from. They're not going to be scattered to the four winds for a good part of that until something happens. And something happens is when people started getting evicted. And they're getting evicted for all sorts of reasons. But especially, they're going to get evicted during the Great Hunger. And this is a return to the Honourable, the House of Commons, 19th of February 1849. And it says how many is going to get evicted, because there's a process. The process has to be brought. The bailiff has to be informed. You have to go through the courts in order for evictions to do that. So it tells you here, in this area, the union is the Union of Ballinamore. So the poor law unions are set up in 1839. We're now under the Union of Montbellier, but that was 1851 when that was created. So the union, and you see up the very top there, Killine. Pat Ginty, an agent of John Gerard. You may boo and hiss at that name, John Gerard. So Marcella, his wife. So Pat Ginty, he's got the notice to serve, and he's going to evict 7 people. Now the townland La Croher, I'm not too familiar with it, so I don't know if anybody here might know from the sound.
Yeah.
Where is
Over
it?
Newbridge villages.
Yes.
Head up towards Mount Bello.
Yes.
We are about 3/4 of a mile. You know where Heinz's Corner is?
Yes,
Lara
I do.
Croher
Yeah,
is just
that,
across.
yeah.
We pronounce it Lara Croher now.
Lara Croher.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah, it's only a small, very small area.
Tiny.
Yeah.
And 7 people from that small area are going to be evicted there.
Yeah.
My law, a place called Shkehanna. Pat Riley. Agent to James Kenny. If ever you're in Shkehanna Church, some of you might have the occasion to go there, and you're going in and you go to the right and just look above there's 2 doorways. We live below the church, other people lived above the church. We went into the doorway below the church, other people went above the church. Little divide there. But the one there, you'll see that's in memories, James Kenny's family. His brother actually refurbished that church a little bit later on. But James Kenny, he evicted quite an amount of people in this time. The family eventually, one of them, his grandson, great-grandson, becomes a minister in the Free State government. So it's an amazing kind of thing. And as you go down there, you see Killimer, Clonfert, Aircourt, Killasolin, and then Killaroran, and Colpit, Greenville in Killasolin. And you've got 24 being evicted. But in Roslin and Colpit, John Mahan, agent to Reverend E. Paget, James Lyons, and Miss Mariah Tools, 110 evicted. So this is 1849. We're kind of right in the heart of the Great Hunger at that stage. So what's going on? Villages are being decimated, and people. This is from the London Illustrated News. And this lady here, her name is Bridget O'Donnell, and it's one of the first ordinary people ever to be interviewed for a newspaper. Herself and her children are out, and she's describing how she gets to be evicted. And it turns out that it's some of the neighbours trying to grab the land as well. So there's a lot going on in our history that we can now go back and find out. And some of you are very familiar with Strokestown House. And in Strokestown House, all the letters there from people asking for help and all of that. But also saying, oh, you know that woman now, her husband has died. She's not going to be able to farm as well as I can. Can I rent the 3 acres or so? So there's a lot that would be the reasons for our families being scattered. And then obviously education-wise. So we're losing out on education. Letters are not going to be written. And on Bertha Moore, whole decade, the lost generation. People are going right around the world. I brought in some books there that it's always great to have a read through and find out stuff. Immigrants and Exiles, the book there, a man called Kirby Miller. Kirby has brought his work to University of Galway. And what Kirby did is he looked at the letters that immigrants wrote and he analysed them and found out about what the reasons were, where they went to. And I love the way he said there were immigrants and exiles. So what's an immigrant? A person who goes somewhere and they're ready to make a life of it. What's an exile? A person who is forced to go and is always thinking of back home. They have never left. And there's many of our exiles in the pubs in Kilburn and in the bars in the Bronx who will tell you word for word what happened in a match 3 weeks ago that you mightn't have even known was on in your own parish because they have never left. The Irish diaspora, Turtle, Bunbury, some of you are familiar with them. Turtle has done fantastic work. Divergent Paths here, John Herson, Staffordshire in England. A lot of people from our area go there. And there's a kind of a double immigration because when they go there, the first, second generation then move on. And they move on, a lot of them go to the United States. And I was fortunate enough to connect with one of them. There were Lally families. And they go to Staffordshire from Galway. And then they go to America. And one of their descendants is a guy called Tom Brady. I don't know if you've heard of Tom Brady. He's an American quarterback, plays American football. And he's described as a goat, the greatest of all time. G-O-A-T, a goat. But his family, the connections, are there in Staffordshire going on as a double immigration. On Gurtha Moor, how did it affect around here? These are available from the CSO, the Central Statistics Office. So just by a quick Google, CSO census 1851. And this is the union here of Mount Bellew. So union has been set up, and these here on the left-hand side, you will see are the different sections of that union. The total down at the bottom is the total, the arrows, 34,569 is a population in 1841. The total 22,790 is 1851. So we have lost almost 12,000. Almost, well, over 33% of our population has gone. And you see the numbers 5,661. That's the number of inhabited houses, families. And it goes down to 3,872. So 1,800 families disappear from our area. And you see Killaloran in here. You can see the third column over 5,011. That's the number of adults and children in this area, Killaloran, and it goes down to 3,273. So some places were greatly affected. This is some of the places around here. Hugh, there's Turrar and other places around. So Killine, Newbridge, New Grove, Rushstown, Woodbrook. So this here now, hopefully you should find some place you're familiar with. It's in alphabetical order, obviously. It's Ballybone is up the very top, so I'm good that way. Okay? I'm going to just go to the next one over just in case. We got Riversdale down here in Newtown. Okay, Ballinamore just around the corner, Muckina. So obviously, and I think we just have the Trehill. I get confused with Trier and Trehill. Sorry. So here's Trehill. Okay. And we have Cartron and Charlestown and Ballinvower. North and south. Northmen, Southmen. So we've got here Trehill. So for instance in Trehill, you will see that there was 203 people in Trehill East in 1841 and 1851 114. Now, unfortunately, we don't have their names because all of these census, the individual records, were lost in June of 1923 in the forecourts. There are fragments left because if somebody applied for the pension from 1908 on up to 1923, the person applying for the pension, how you would verify their age is if they're on the census. So you could be very, very lucky with that you could have somebody applying for the pension. Of all my great-great-grandparents, only one did, because my great-granny did live that long, but unfortunately she never applied for the pension, so therefore I don't know who her parents were, because it's out there. There's so much invaluable information, but there's ways to get some of that. So this is why Ballinamore town there, you can see, it went from 363 to 460. It went from 652 houses up to 83. So 17 of them was unoccupied at the time. So there's a lot of different nuances in the area. So it's not like everything was bad in every single area. There were some hit hard and some not. Christine Kennelly, who's a famous author on this period, she was at a talk in 2014 in Ballinamore, and I asked her, why did some areas? And she goes, we don't know. It just happened. It just happened at some places. It's not the fact that there was a good landlord. Sometimes there were very, very bad landlords, but the population was okay. Sometimes great landlords, but just there was a huge amount that was happening. So where did it go to? These books explore their stories. Plentiful Country just came out there last year. A guy called Tyler Anbender, and Tyler explored the Immigrant Savings Bank, set up specifically to help Irish immigrants in New York, and still going. And you can see up the very top there, Immigrant Savings Bank. Do you see the second person's down there? His name is Dennis Cusack. So Dennis Cusack. So Dennis is living there. You can see he's a bartender. He's living in 2215 East Broadway, and he's from County Galway. It tells us because when you're setting up the account, this was kind of like, the biometrics of its day. Where were you from? What ship did you come in? So that way they had a detail. And these are an amazing treasure. Dennis here is in the 1880 census, and he's married, and he's got children. I'll talk a little bit about him in a few minutes. So that is basically why we're disconnected. The famine on Gertha Moor, and then the repercussions after that. Because the next generation that grew up here in the 1840s, when they grew up and hadn't got married, we had another famine, 1879, 1880. And that drove an awful lot more out. And then we have the land agitation. But part of the land agitation also was land consolidation. So if you're a farmer with 10 acres, who's going to inherit the land? It's going to be the oldest son. And that oldest son, if he had siblings, what's going to happen to the siblings? They're going to go to their cousins and relations who have immigrated. And who is that oldest man going to marry? Well, there's going to be a lovely match. See that girl down the road? She's got 3 bullocks. Yes. That's how you get a good match there. And then they have kids. And we can see their kids in the 1901 census. The 3 bullocks may have disappeared at this stage, by the way. But in the 1901 census, we can see them. But again, there's a large family. Well, where did they go? Well, they again. So this chain migration. So we have had this for a lot. Now, it was before the famine as well. Okay, there was a lot of immigration before the famine as well. But the famine really pushed it. On Gertha Moor, really pushed it out. So how are we going to find out a little bit? What resources are there? And thankfully, we in Ireland have amazing resources. And the vast majority of them are free, which is even better. I can hear the pockets shaking there. It's like, oh my God. But the vast majority of them are free. Starting with the most wonderful resource, irishgenealogy.ie. The births, marriages, and death records going back to the 1860s for most. Some marriages, if they're Church of Ireland, Presbyterian, or Jewish, go back to the 1840s. Why not Catholic? Well, the Catholic Church didn't want their records. They kept them within the parishes. But eventually in the 1860s, they reached a compromise. So the birth, marriages, and death there in the Irish genealogy. The National Archives, the census of 1901, 1911, and next April, 1926. It's going to be amazing to see the changes there. But they also have some census in Galway for 1821. A few parishes have that. And then there are census fragments, as I said, when you're applying for the old age pension. So 1851, 1841, you could get lucky there. The registers.nli.ie, the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, based in Utah. Their idea, their theology is about reaching back to their dead ancestors and offering them baptism. Well, how do you know who your dead ancestors are? You've got to do the family tree. So they came to Ireland in the 1950s. They went to the parishes. They microfilmed all of these records. And those now are free online. They're not digitized. You have to find another way to find them, but they're online there. Townlands.ie. Any townland, it has 3 very important things. You can go to the townland to find your census returns and also find the Griffiths valuation, which is from the 1850s in our area, which is a record of heads of households. So where you live today, you can find who was there in 1850. And then if you go up to Dublin, it will be online, they said a few years ago, in a few years. It will be online eventually. And there you've got what's called a cancellation box. So whenever there's a change of land ownership, they write it in, but in a different colour pen for each year. So you're able to get that. And you can go up and to buy it yourself in the Irish Life. So there's fantastic. John Grinham, Barry Griffin have great resources. Galway Library is a great resource. The newspapers, Irish newspapers, they are online now, and you can find an awful lot. And then this one, FalterRoad.com. Now, where you see Galway there, you can put in any county, and you can go to the civil parish, and you get a list of the people who lived in the civil parish. So this is a little test for you. One of these is Killeen, and one is Killorn. Which is which? Let's have a little vote. I am going to use right, left. So right, left. Oh, we could even do a Lohan, Nolan. It counts as that. Killeen. Who thinks it's on the right? So Killeen Lohans. Yeah. Killeen, who thinks it's on the left? Nolan's. Killeroran, who thinks it's on the left with the Nolan side? They're not going to sing for you. The Nolan sisters are not going to come out and do a duet here or whatever. Okay? Yeah. So Killeen, Newbridge, Crehans. Have you heard of many Crehans around here? Have you heard them in Newbridge? Fantastic families. I have to say that because it's being recorded, but I say that anyways. You know. And these here then, and we have some Canes here as well tonight as well. So these are the families now. The bigger, obviously, the more names that were there. So I got this from that list. So it's an amazing little thing. I just did a little bit of a word cloud to put in perspective. But you can see as well, even though you're neighbours, there's a big difference in names in terms of that. So when you're looking for your family, one of the big things is just to go back to this in the 1850s and just to see where are they recorded at that time. Killay's here and here. So it's not going to help you that way. But with some names, it's going to help you quite a lot. Other websites there, familysearch.org, free, amazing resource. And over the summer, it got a new one that has kind of revolutionized how you can look at local history. So it has a full text search. So I can put in Killine, and I can pick out deeds from the 1650s that its AI has trawled through and said Killine. Whereas before, you'd have to go and read it yourself and try and pick out the words. So it's amazing what's done. Roots Ireland, fantastic if you have some money. This is the baptismal and marriage records, and you can manipulate it. So you can go and you can just look and see who the sponsors are, because a lot of times families are going to get sponsors. So if you can find your family, you can see who of that family surname has been sponsored, who they've been sponsored. And also you can look at per the location, the townland, to see what that. Found my past, another great site, but Ancestry.com, especially for DNA, is the one that I'm going to talk a little bit more about there. And Ancestry.com, it had been run by the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. They sold it up. They run FamilySearch.org now for free. Ancestry you have to pay. But at the same time, there's a wealth of information. A lot of people use it for their family trees. So what can you get in these records? Well, let's go to a merchant here in Ballinamore Bridge, Thomas Taylor. And Thomas Taylor, he gets married in 1867, gets married in the parish church in Killoon, okay? His father is Charles Taylor, who's a shopkeeper, and he gets married to a Susan Taylor, who's from Bitterfield. And her father is Thomas Taylor, a farmer. There was some connection with the Taylors, but at the same time, these weren't, I don't think, first or second cousins. They were out a small bit. The priest that married them, the local vicar, John Cotton Walker, and this is 1867. A wealth of information just in that. In the presence of us, the best man and the bridesmaid. So Thomas Taylor and E.R. Harrison. So he has put his signature there. Looks like a T.W. Taylor, and then Susan Taylor, her signature as well. So I'm going to follow them a small bit. Here is Susan, and this is her death cert. It's I'm just trying to read it from here now, the 14th of November, 1927. And Susan, she has aged 80, a merchant's, I'm trying to read that, merchant's widow, fantastic. And if you look then, who is the person present at death? Okay, a brother, it seems, or something. No, just Ballinamore Bridge, it says. But it's a Godkin, Charlotte Godkin. Okay, there's a lot of information if they put it down, in especially death certs, how they're related, the connections there. So these are some of the ways you can do that. So this was written out, but this is what you can get on irishgenealogy.ie.
Chad Godkin worked with the Taylors here.
Fantastic, and that's who was present.
To the walkers in down below Ballagare.
Fantastic.
Clonroe.
Yeah. So that's why he was present at death here.
It was a lady.
Where Cha.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cha. Where was Taylor's shop? Was this?
Here.
This was Taylor's shop. So it's fantastic to have that. And then you can see the fourth one down is Susan Taylor. So these are the regular. This is what you can get on irishgenealogy.ie. So you have that. What that other one was a death cert that was written out themselves. But this is what the register would have done. And you can see the other people around here from one of the Cheevers from Bono's. Bridget Mitchell, Ballyban.
Yeah.
Is that's us here? And then you've got a Mary Higgins from Castle Blakeney. So this is the entire Montbellew Poor Law area that they would have been registering. So you go into Montbellew and you would register the death. And it would tell you when the death was registered as well. So this is the 14th, am I reading that right? 14th of November, 27, and it was the 21st. So within a week. Now, if you didn't register on time, you got fined. which leads to a slight anomaly on birth records. You will find some of your ancestors were baptized before they were born. And it's not that they were little miracles, as all of your families, I'm sure, were little miracles, but it's just the fact that you got them baptized first within a few days. And then, when you got time, you got them registered. But you mightn't have been on time, so you kind of fibbed it a small. Not that your families would ever fib. I'm not saying that around. Probably all around here were quite good there. But there's lots of information that you can find to connect just on the resources to find the families. And then here is Riversdale. Here are the Tullys. Still around? So quite a lot of the family. So you can see Patrick and Bridget, his wife. Now the wife's maiden name is not recorded there, so you just go in and you find one of the kids' birth certs, and that then will give you the wife's maiden name. And then you go back and you find the marriage record. So there's a process involved in doing this. And currently the lovely children in 5th and 6th class in Ballinamore are doing this process. Next Thursday, is it Thursday or Wednesday, we'll be doing that process there. And then you've got this amazing original record down the bottom left-hand side, which is what they filled in. So you've got that document, and on the right-hand side then, you've got the enumerator is filled in, which tells you what kind of a house that they lived in, how many rooms were in the house, what kind of a roof did they have, how many windows were in the front of the house, and all of that. And if you just look at the person's name here, Patrick Tully, there were 5 rooms in the house. The Mitchells, there were 3 rooms. There were 7 people in that 5-room house, and there was 5 in the Mitchells in their 3 rooms. And then, the thing that has changed the most, who owned the house? No longer is the landlord going to be the owners. There's a big change. And now you have tenant farmers. Obviously, they got the money from somewhere. Turns out it was the British government, and the land annuities then became a big thing in the 1930s. But at least they're not going to get evicted by the local landlord.
The Mitchells lived in the gatehouse, to
Riverstown.
Riversdale. There were tailors and dressmakers.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Any of them still around you?
Pardon?
Any of them still around? No connections. And any connections of the Tullys still around?
I have relations of the Tullys in Boston.
Who just said that?
Me,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I blame it on my eyesight, not on the fact that your lips were moving so well. But you have.
Yeah, my
Tully.
aunt was married to Michael Tully there down.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, in Boston, and they're
And they're still
Yeah.
family.
some of them.
Tell them we were talking about in a nice way. We were talking in a nice way about them.
Yeah.
So here's that family.
Here last year.
And that. Now, I just picked this. I was doing a little bit on. I cut out the names there on the left-hand side. But this would be not quite typical, but you could come across this as well. A multi-generational family living in the same house. So you have Thomas and Kate, his wife, but then you also have Pat and Kate, who are his in-laws. And then you have Pat, it says the nephew, it turns out it's Kate's sister's son, so it's Kate's nephew. And then they have their own kids. I wonder who was first for the bat on a Saturday. So this is another reason why people didn't hang about. There's no room. So Michael is not the oldest of the Tullys. So he's going to immigrate and to do that. And it's through looking at records locally that we can reach out and see a little bit about them. But my favourite ones are the Griffiths valuation. The heads of households. Now, I got Ballinamore, because who would not want to live in Ballinamore? The whole of the pigs. So we have that in Curraboy there. And we have lots of Tullys and Fallons and Healys and Gillums, okay, and Connors. And then the Honourable Martin French, in fee. In fee means that he's the owner, okay? But the rest then, the Thorngates of Bohana, So they have a little bit of land kind of like coming out here. You'll see what they have. The acres is the first number, then roods and perches, and then pounds, shilling and pence. How much can you get out of that land? And then there would be a rate put on that land. So if you could get 16 pounds out of that land, you might be charged a rate of 8 pence in the pound. And that, some of you might remember, Jack Lynch, 1976, gone, all changed utterly. Incredible tax breaks were born. So you have all of that, and then at the very end, the next to last one is the house itself, the value of the buildings. So for instance, Richard, I'm looking there, Meal, would that be right? Meikle. Meikle, Richard Meikle, renting from James Torngate. He's got buildings, £2 and 10 shillings, which is quite substantial buildings, because poor Patrick Tully there, he's got 10 shilling, probably a 2-roomed house, and then just below it, Michael Fallon, 5 shillings. So that's the value of the house. So you're talking about probably a 1-room cabin. This is right after the Great Hunger. So remember, those who are gone are going to be the poorest of the poor. They're going to be the ones who are in the 4th class houses. These are 3rd class. They somehow survived. And then this is Ballyban, where we are. Dennis Kelly, John Mahan, Francis Burke, and the Constabulary Force. The Irish Constabulary. They're not the Royals yet. That's 1867 with the Fenian Rising. And you can see what's here. The Petty Sessions Courthouse, which in the War of Independence was attacked. And you've got a half-annual rent there as well. So there's lots of things that were exempt. Obviously, you can't get the police, or you can't get the Petty Sessions Court to pay the tax because they are a public body. So you have all of that. The really cool thing is you can see 1 and 2 there. On the left, the numbers in A, B, C. So the lowercase a, b, c will be buildings and usually houses. So you can see the valuation of them there. Francis Burke, £12. The Constabulary Force, £8. Substantial buildings. And then they would be marked out on the map. So you see number 2 here. And the police barracks. So you have all of that information to work through. And then number 1 is up on the left-hand side, Ballybowen number 1. One of French's Acres is a different one. That's French's Acres 1. And one of Riversdale is a different one. Okay? So the guy that went around doing this, Richard Griffiths, he had a method to it. He took the maps from the 1830s and he delineated then each holding. And if one of the holdings had a bit of bog into it, but it was one stretch, he divided up into capital letters A, B, and C. So that way, he would value this section, which has a bog in it. This is section A, section B, if it's Midland, section C, Great Land. Give them different valuations on that. So you've done all of that digging and stuff like that. You found that there are people kind of like around the place. You stick it into your family tree. This is my family tree going back here. They were in Briarfield, came up to Gilka at some stage. Gilka is my home village, Jimmy Screen's pub, some of you are familiar with. Used to be Harry Melby's, fantastic place. And this is what you're dealing with. So who are the siblings of these great people? See the family on the right-hand side, John Curley and Annie Kane. Never heard of them. Did not know anything about them until 3 years ago. DNA. And he was born in the same area as I was. My grandfather's uncle, who went to a place called Warrington in England. Some of you might have heard of Warrington, because so many people from East Galway went there, including my aunts and uncle. And they found work. First of all, they were doing work on the farms close by, and then they found work in the factories, the wire factories that were there. But it was constant going over. They would sow their crops here, and then they would go and work for the farmers around Lancashire and Cheshire from our area. John trekked the same way. and then he went to New York. And that's where my father's aunts went as well. So Mary and Ellen and Julia, they all go. The two youngest stayed in Ireland, but the three girls and their brother go to New York. But amazingly, we didn't know about that until DNA. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. Using DNA to reconnect. Who here has done a DNA test? Fantastic. Who here is about to do a DNA test? Because I'm going to convince you, please do a DNA test. If you are the oldest, now, actually that might be true for most of you. Some of you have probably parents still alive. You're all looking so young, so you might not be the oldest generation. But if you are not the oldest generation, okay, get the oldest generation. If you do happen, like me, to be the oldest generation, get as many siblings and family members as possible to do it. Because it will help an awful lot to connect. So this is where we get our DNA from. We get it from our ancestors. Some of them give more than others. I use this example with students and I talk about pictures as any of them. Got a picture at home of an auntie or a granduncle or a granddad and it looks a bit like them. Or which side of the family do you look like? And that's the thing about DNA. The autosomal DNA that all of us share, it comes down randomly. But we do look a small bit like some sides of our family than others. And where can you get a DNA test? There are several companies. 23andMe hit the headlines recently because it kind of went into liquidation and there's all sorts of things about the people, but it was a big company and it's probably going to recover. Living DNA, startup about 7-8 years, basically mainly in the UK. The other three then are the big hitters, MyHeritage, Family Tree, and Ancestry. Ancestry, by far and away, has the highest number of people who have done a DNA test. And Ancestry this week has a sale, and it's just about 40 euros. So just rattle your pockets there. I think there's about 25 in one and about 20 in the other. He's got 50 in one here, and he had to get up. It was so heavy on the one side. So what do they do? Well, basically, you get a kit like this. You open it. Always good to open stuff. And then you spit into it. And that's as painful as it is. Normally when I'm helping people at this stage, I say, I'll just turn away here now. Let you spit away. And just the saliva, even if you just do that, the saliva in the back, that's all it is. Then you just put on this here, takes this off, put this on here, and this just kind of like this little blue liquid that goes in there, and it's a bit of a stabilizer. So then you send it away. It's prepaid. So you send it away, and what happens after 4 to 6 weeks, you get your results back. So I'll show you what happens with that. But what do they do while it's away? Well, they look at your chromosomes. We have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 23 from my mom, 23 from our dad. So you could be related on one side of your family, somebody, your best mate is related to them on another side of the family. So it's a matter, you can pick out if it's your mom's side or if your dad's side on terms of that. And what they basically do is they'll look at certain areas on that. Now, MyHeritage has just started to look at the whole thing, which 25 years ago would have cost about $1 billion. Advances have come on so well. So they're looking at whole genome after Christmas, and they're going to look at tens of thousands as opposed to just a few thousand on the others, but I think they will get on it. So what happens? So I got this off smithplanet.com. So your mom and dad, they get their DNA of their parents, obviously, and then they pass it down, but it's random. So you don't look exactly like your sibling if you have a sibling. Don't look, but you look a bit like them. And that's why, in terms of that. Does that make sense? So I'm going to skip this a small bit there. So as that's coming down here, it's passed along, you can see there, generation after generation, that gets passed down. So you're going to retain a lot of your grandparents' DNA. You're going to retain a good bit of your great-grandparents. Your great-great-grandparents, you contain a small bit, and sometimes you might contain just a tiny, tiny bit. And it's about then comparing that to others who have done a DNA test. And they then, hopefully, will carry that same segment down. So that segment, let's say on chromosome 5, that you inherit from your great-grandparent, your second cousin, if they inherited that, it'll come up, there's a match, and it'll show you where they've inherited. And then, if you have also got a mysterious, and that does happen, there's lots of surprises that happens in DNA, believe it or not. People have very good nights in some places, and what happens is that it pops up. You're able to, oh, that must be from that side of the family, and to be able then to find it out. And just to help you out, I'm going to ask you all to memorize this chart. And then, please, there'll only be 5 questions in the quiz afterwards. Look at yourself there. Look at your sibling. So your sibling will have with you shared as little as 1,613 centimorgans. That's how you measure the amount of DNA. Or as much as 3,488. So if you come up and there's a match with somebody and they have 2,500, you know that's your sibling. Okay? Now, if it's a half sibling, just go over to the left. So you share one parent, not both. You can see there's a subtle difference. And how you figure out it's a half sibling, not that, is who then you share the matches with. Do you share it on both sides of the family, or do you share it just on your mom's side or your dad's side? And it goes out to the left and to the right. You see there 8 cousins. So that goes way back. But our problem with 8 cousins, we cannot go back on the records. So we can go back maybe 5th cousins, and we're lucky enough. But then if you share a surname that could be quite rare or quite localized, like Lohan, and they have Lohan, you might be related on them, but you'd have to see that segment. If another of your Lohan cousins has it as well, then there's a good chance it's on the Lohan side. This is a very new technology, and it's a matter of getting used to it. Your children see the child, grandchild, great-grandchild. You can see the drop from 3,487, half, and that is the same then if you go upwards, your parent, your grandparent, and so on, in terms of sharing that. So you get your results back. This is what it used to look like. It still says hello, Martin. It likes to say hello, Martin. And it tells you your ethnicity, and a lot of people, that's lovely. It's nice. The only good thing about that is if somebody who's an unknown was coming up as a match, and they're like, oh, my paperwork says, yeah, I'm 100%, all my ancestors are English, and it comes off 50% Irish. You have a little discrepancy between the paperwork and your DNA, what's being passed on. And it's a matter of looking at that. But what I like is the matches, the DNA matches. And what Ancestry does, if you put up as well a tree, it looks around and it says, oh, this person is matching you. Oh, they've got this. This, the true lines there, this is the possibility of how you are related. And sometimes it might jump 1 or 2 generations that they don't have on their tree, and you're like, yeah, that's it. Because you're able then to go back into those records and discover that. The really cool thing as well, I can tell you where your relations are. So this is newish. So the one that I had there before, that's about 7 or 8 years old, that picture. This one now, Ancestry changes their formats all the time, so that way I have to change my pictures, and then I said, no, I won't do it tonight, I'll just kind of leave the old one up there just to compare. It doesn't do fourth cousins anymore. I probably have over 1,000 fourth cousins. Doesn't mean that there are fourth cousins. It means that there could be that connection. So some of them could be third cousins 3 times removed, or some of them could be fifth cousins or sixth cousins. But you can see there's a little bit going on in terms of where people are. They're in our diaspora. The United States, Ireland and England and Australia. I never knew I had cousins in Australia until DNA. And now there's several cousins who are very special cousins because we've discovered not quite how exactly we're related, but we're related. And it's really nice, the friendships that are made. And it has come a huge way. So this is what happens. This is my latest here. And you get your top matches. So if you look there, you'll see the sister on both sides. So my father's side and my mother's side. So a full sister. And it's 2,518 centimorgans. We share 48%. So that's my sister Carmel. And then my uncle is on the maternal side. So that's my mom's brother. And I share 1,814 with Larry, who passed away sadly 2 years back. And then my first cousin in a place called Warrington. Did I mention Warrington before? I didn't mention. So Catherine's granddad, Morton, we weren't too sure. We knew he was from County Galway. And when the 1901 census came out, I happened to be living over there at the time, and we were at the house. Catherine's uncle was there. I said, you know what, let's have a look. They knew that he was from some place with Kill in its name. So when Catherine used to come, and her mom was my dad's sister, and her dad, he used to come over, born in Warrington, used to come and drive, and he went out. They knew it was near Lochray, was near a lake. So they went to all the kills, Kilbaconty, Kilnadima, all the kills, asking, did anyone know of a Michael Morton, who was his dad? He had passed away at the stage. Knew that he was from Galway, but didn't exactly didn't find him. But Edward passed away, Catherine's dad. Tom, her uncle, was at the party and said, what else do you know? Well, I knew there were Suttons. Let's look for Suttons in Galway. It's not a big name. There were 2 Suttons, brothers, in Ballinamore. They got the Kill the wrong part, near Woodford. And there we found their dad with his mother. But I can't find the records. That's why I gifted Catherine a DNA, to try and find a little bit more. But like that, DNA sometimes works. We found lots of cousins, but not to confirm the Morton side, unfortunately. And it's not that far back. Tom came back for his 80th birthday, and we met a man who was in his 90s, a man called John Blackturn. And John used to drive into Lochray to do his shopping. He'd park outside, he's in his 90s, he'd park the van outside the shop. Person would come out, everybody would have to drive around John. The guy would go in the shop, get his groceries, and come back, and John would drive back out to Woodford again. And John remembered the Mortons. And that was lovely to reconnect them that way. So when you're doing the tree, you can search as well. And you can search in different ways. So look over on the right-hand side there. So if you search by the match's name, for instance, I'm up there as Martin Curley. So if you put in Curley into your matches, anyone that is my family or I'm working with will pop up. You can search by the surname in the matches trees, or you can search by location. So if I put in Ballinamore Bridge in Galway, I can see these people here have an ancestor that they have put down as being from Ballinamore Bridge. And you know the Healy's up the road. So that's their cousin up in Dublin. And then Colin here. Colin was one of our early members in the Ballygar group that I set up on Facebook. So these are people who match me, but also have relations in Ballinamore Bridge. Doesn't mean that I have that same relation to Ballinamore Bridge, but on their tree, they have that. And I don't want people on the other side of the divide to feel out of, so I'll put in Killeen as well, just in case. So you have other people there now. I didn't kind of like look too much. If they have a dot, that means I hadn't been in touch with them. And as you can see, I kind of reach out to a lot of people, even if they're tiny, just say, hi, how you doing? We're a DNA match, and I invite them to join the East Galway group because they might have better matches there that they don't know about and help them to reconnect with that. So I picked one of these, and I looked at their tree, and I looked at what their DNA says, and I'm trying to think, well, what's a name that could be around here? I know there's not too many waltzes around here. It's not that much music, is there? So Elizabeth Waltz may not be from around here. But there's a few names. So I kind of looked then to see, did I share DNA with any of them? So on this you can look, see where it says trees, origins, shared matches. So that's the origins, that side there. So he has got 36% plus 12%, so it's 48% Irish. So he's got a good bit of Irish there. So I looked then to see shared matches. No, sure, it's too far out. So a shared match with Ancestry is 20 centimorgans. So we could have 25 people sharing 19 centimorgans, but Ancestry won't show them because that's their cut-off point. Because the less that you share, the chances of being related historically becomes less and less. And if you go down too low, it could be a random DNA mutation that actually goes back hundreds of years rather than 2 or 3 generations. So then I had a look to see, Killeen, Mariah Glenn, yes, Glenn in Killeen. So I had a look then to see, she died in Gort, she was baptized in 1832. Sometimes what happens, people pick a name and it may not be their ancestor's name, but it sounds like it, or is their name, but it's in a different place. So somebody going from Newbridge to Gort, what are the chances? Not that much. And sometimes you don't have a tree either. So there's lots of complications. So when you root down to the furthest away, there may not be. This person here, Thomas Hines, yes, Killeen, born in 1780. His father is Turner Hines. Who has a neighbour called Turner? Anne-Marie, do you have a neighbour called Turner? Turner Hines, no one? And then, where did he get that record from? From Wexford. Thomas Hines is probably right, but then he kind of like found that Thomas Hines, who had parents Turner Hines and Bridget Murphy, 2 and 2 becomes, or 6 or 7. So it's kind of hard to figure out sometimes, and that's why you've got this great tool called GEDmatch. Well, I call it GEDmatch, it's probably called GEDmatch. And so what you have here, so this is mine here. So your kid, and these are all the people that share, and you can see the total centimorgans up there, and then the generation from a common ancestor. So the top person is my sister. She's 1 generation from a common ancestor, our parents. So I'm 1 generation from my parents, she's 1 generation from my parents. So she's 1 generation removed. The next person is my uncle, he's 1.5 generations. So he's 1 generation from my grandparents and I am 2, so therefore that's 1.5. Does that make sense? So that generation there. And as you go down, obviously it goes out a little bit. My auntie Nora is 1.5 and my cousin Catherine is almost 2 generations because we share grandparents. So parents is 1 generation and then we're the next generation, 2 generations there. So this is what you get there in terms of your DNA on this particular, and it's free, this one. And what you can use this for as well is you can use it what's called ancestry projects. And we have the East Galway Ancestor Project. And at the moment there's 5,700 kits in that. So if you think that you have ancestry from our area, you stick it in there, and if you come up with a lot of matches that are like about 4 generations, yeah, there's some connection there. So we'll have to look into it a little bit. So DNA, once you spit into the tube and you send it away, it begins a life of its own. And it's a fantastic journey because it connects you with a huge amount of people. I gave you the list of my family before. You probably didn't remember all my father's aunts. One of them was Ellen. And Ellen, she went to New York and, like her siblings, immigrated because times were tough. Our farm wasn't the biggest, and her sisters married, and their family came to visit, and they would send Christmas cards. And I remember as a kid, the Christmas card, it was a rich kind of velvety card from the Teehans. It was like, wow. And then I met some of them when I went to America as well. It was like, great. Elizabeth Kijaya Nikiopoulos is not one of the Nikiopoulos from Ballinamore Bridge. You probably are familiar with that family. The Kijayas are just over the road in Ballinlass, I think. Not too sure, but that Elizabeth pops up as a cousin, DNA cousin. This is, I think, 2015, 2016. Who's Elizabeth? And I looked, and she had a small tree. And on that tree was a Curley, an Ellen Curley. But she was a distant third or fourth cousin to me. So I had to ask her, can you upload to Genealogy? And at that stage, I had a few of the cousins uploading. So I was able then, on Genealogy, this is the tools. They're free. You can also pay $100 for other tools, which are quite useful. Are your parents related? It's one of the tools, by the way. You can check that. If your parents are related, one of the chromosomes, remember you've got 23 pairs? Well, in one of those, they'll have the exact same little piece of DNA. And chances are that for most of us, it's no. But for some of us, there's a little bit of a distant match. They could be fourth or fifth cousin. Does everyone here know their fourth or fifth cousin? Okay. Does everyone know their wives or husbands' fourth or fifth cousins? Are they the same as yours? Maybe. But what happens is sometimes it does happen. But what you can do is also look at who they match, who they have in common. And when I looked at who Elizabeth and I had in common, obviously I've knocked off their names and their kit numbers. See all the blue? And it was on my great-grandmother's side. And the closest match was going to be my cousin Catherine. And she was coming up as a second cousin to Elizabeth. Elizabeth's Ellen Curley was my father's aunt that we knew nothing about. It turns out Ellen had died in the influenza of 1918, but she was married with 4 kids. And none of the American cousins had known about them, because it's the 1920s. New York is a big place. Her husband, the widower, remarries. The kids had no contact with their Curley cousins at all. It was only when Elizabeth, now I had one aunt, my Aunt Nora, still alive at that time, and I told her the news. Now, my Aunt Bridgie in Warrington in England would be so excited. Nora loved to hear stories about what's going on around the place. But family wasn't the biggest thing. And I was like, Nora, your aunt had children. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh. I got excited with other people in the family. But here you have an amazing amount of shared DNA. And it turns out that she was able then, Ellen Curley, who she knew nothing about, was Martin Curley and Jude Byron's daughter. And she had gone to America with her cousins and her siblings, the Byrons and the Curleys and some of the Mannions. And then on the other side of the family, Ellen, her cousin, had married a Reddington as well. And I think that Martin Reddington and this man, Philip Reddington, that another of the cousins had married, were actually related as well. And that's how they got to know each other. So I was lucky enough to have done the DNA, and you could upload it up until May to another site, MyHeritage. Now, MyHeritage is very cheap as well. It's 29 euros to do the test. MyHeritage breaks it down slightly different. That's me, by the way. It breaks it down slightly different. And it has close family and extended family and distant relations. And the thing about all of the DNA is for you to make contact, for you to reach out and to find a little bit about who you are related to. Because your DNA comes back, but that's not the story. The story is you then reaching out to people and saying, hello, we're a DNA match. And I have done that through the East Galway group to a lot of people. The reply rate is not the best, but when people do reply, it's always good. And going back a few years ago, there was a story. Do you remember the Cusacks that I mentioned there, Dennis Cusack? There was a story about a guy called John Cusack. Do you know who John Cusack is? He's an actor. And John Cusack was kind of chased down by two of Daithí Morris researchers. They kind of went into the rooms. He was up in Belfast for a film fest. And they're like, do you know that your Cusacks are from County Galway? And he looked at them. No, they're not. They're from County Meath. My mother told me. And they were like, oh. And it was a little bit. But it turns out John Cusack's are from County Galway. And John Cusack's Dennis was his great-grandfather. Dennis's father was Francis Cusack, or otherwise known as Frank. And he died the 5th of November in a place called Ballinamore. And this is Dennis up here. You can see his family. Sadly, Dennis died young, and his son kind of died young, and they didn't have all that story to tell. So we were able to find a little bit about where they were from. A place called Kappa. Kappa. Now, there was a national school in Kappa, some of you may know of. Sadly, that building is no longer there. But there's Kappa, and just down that road, and Anne-Marie was kind enough to let me into this kids in 2021, in June of 2021. Because Frank Cusack, not alone was he doing a little bit of farming, but he was also working for the local constabulary. He was a peace police commissioner, and he wrote a letter. And that letter was published on the RTE website. And Paul Conley, that you all know of, Paul has an amazing website, you know, Paul then shared that. And I was like, wow. So I did a little video. We went into Ballinamore, and I just shared the story of John Cusack. And last Saturday week, these are the Cusacks walking down the road in Kappa. Now, the lady on the left is John's first cousin. The lady on the right is her 5th cousin. Their father, Paddy Cusack, moved to Ballinasloe, and that was their first time there in about 40 years. But it was lovely to bring them back. And how did we get them back? Through the DNA. Because their auntie in America had done a DNA test, and it came up with Catherine as a cousin on that Cusack side. So after 40 years for the Cusacks on the right, and 150 years for the Cusacks on the left, they walked up that road in Kappa. It's a bit late in the evening. It's November evening. My camera is not the best. Sorry about that. John Cusack would not have approved, I'm sure. But at the same time. So that's a little bit in terms of the autosomal DNA. Sorry about this graphics a little bit. But there's two other types of DNA then. And one of them, this company does it. It's family tree DNA. It's the Y DNA. Okay? And the Y DNA, if you see the blue lines, it's your father's father's father's. Only the males can do this DNA. And we also inherit from our father our surname. So it's a really, really good thing. And I'll speak a little bit about one of the projects. Patrick Glennon has started a fantastic project locally. The maternal DNA comes from our mothers. So my mother, females, my sister's mother, we inherit that. So it's from both males and females can do it, but it only goes back to mother's line. Now this is really cool for finding out where 5,000 years ago our family came from. But it's not too helpful because the mother's surname what? Changes every generation. it's very good if we're working with people who need to find out a little bit more about their close family. We're able to kind of do that. But it's random as well. Whereas the Y DNA, it doesn't change except maybe every 5 generations. And that 5 generations, then you're able to track where it comes from. In my case, my Y DNA, we can track it down here. So very beautiful. Or FTB75683, keep that in your head. But these are all the people, see, all the way up. As you go up, you eventually come to Adam, because the original, the Y DNA that was shared, going back 15, 20,000 years. This is where I am over here. So that's when that mutated. I'm going to get ready for the 800th anniversary. You're all invited. You want to come? 25th or 20th. So, and there's 2 that have that. Now, it's not as nice as the autosomal, where you're getting loads of cousins, but it can be quite helpful. And especially tracing the distant past in our area. And it goes back here, this is the next mutation, going back 750. So I can go back a little bit further. So my ancestry on the Curley side, it's Curley, all the way back. And then the guy that's doing it for us, his name is Martin Curley. Oh, this is the other one here. This is the tribes you ammonia there, Patrick Glennon. So males, please join. Now, it's a bit more expensive, and you're not going to get a big kick out of it. But what will happen, Patrick, and those who are working with him, which is Patrick, pretty much we try to help, but he's an amazing guy. Patrick has done an amazing research on where all the families locally, how they tie into each other. And this is the tribes of Omania, the O'Kelly country. Mine is the Curleys. I'm group 4 there. And you can see I'm the 5th one down. Is the 5th one. Martin Curley, born 1790. That's me there. So this is a cluster of Curleys. But then, like any surname, there could be a reason that somebody adopted the surname a few generations back. So it's not like that every single person of your surname is related by the surname. It could be a bit of an adoption. Now, you'd be glad that this section has just popped up. Final thoughts. First, our diaspora. You are doing a DNA test. Not for you, but for those who are in the diaspora. You are doing it so that way a person who knows that their Lohans came from Ireland, immigrated and arrived in Boston or in Perth or wherever, and knows that there's somebody there, and you doing your DNA, it will pop up. And that happened for me back in 2016 when I got the young people, the TYs in Ballygar, to get a parent or an older sibling to do a test sponsored by Ancestry. It was Halloween week. My phone started to ring. It wasn't my regular phone, it was Facebook Messenger. Pat Abernathy Murphy in Austin, Texas. She had just opened her Ancestry DNA and up popped 7, 8 new close matches. And she had been looking for her family close by here. Her ancestor, her great-grandmother, sorry Pat if I get the wrong grade there, had come as a 9-year-old, 7 or 9-year-old, and didn't know anything about the family. And she knew that there was a Lohan connection. And she had come with Father Huey Lohan the summer before, and she had got some DNA cousins to do it, and now up popped all of this. Our diaspora, the people who left from this area. The Bernard Logan, where's he from there? Ballinamore Bridge, 1902. And he's in Dorchester. He married to Margaret Geary. So I got these from Family Search by just putting in Ballinamore Bridge and seeing who was there. We have Mary O'Connor, April 8, 1840. And she marries in Jersey City, right across the Hudson from New York. She dies in 1911. Her parents are recorded as John O'Connor and Sarah Mannion. Mannion's across the road. O'Connor's not too far away. Don't know if they have done a DNA test or not, but if you do a DNA test, we're able to reconnect them, help them out, find their families. Here's some more O'Connors. Catherine Kennelly, born in 1881, Ballinamore Bridge, 1972, Santa Clara, California. Probably great-great-grandkids at this stage. This is our diaspora, the people that left. James Hannon left at age 22 in 1920. Mary Kinney left at age 45 in 1907. Margaret Lee left at age 20 in 1921. Those were just a few that were leaving with Ballinamore Bridge. Others put down Ballygar or Killine or other places for that. This is a guy called Steve Morris, and you're able to put in stevemorris.org. You're able to put in the place, and then people come up. You see that Ballinamore, so James Hannon, is that our Ballinamore or not? So you have to do a bit of digging. If you click on the other side of that, it'll say to click on and view the file. And this will pop up then, and it's the ship's manifest. And if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 down, James Curley, age 30, from Minla, and his father is Martin Curley. So James is my grandfather's brother. So he's immigrating in 1911. This is Ellis Island in New York Harbor. In 1891, a 15-year-old girl, you know the song? I Love Hope, I Love Tears. And these records, thankfully now, are obtainable online. And you're able to find out a little bit about the family. These are pictures that were at home. These are my dad's first cousins. My granny's brother immigrated to a place called Salem in Massachusetts. And here is the family. And see that little girl in the front? Her name is Joan, my second cousin. And Joan was involved with the Salem town. She came up with an idea. Halloween. Let's do a Halloween fest because of Salem witches. And now 100,000 people go crazy. Sadly, Joan passed away 10 years ago. But there's lots of connections around. This next one, can you guess which is my cousin? I'll give you a clue. He doesn't have a white hat on. So this is my third cousin's son on the right-hand side. And he was a secretary to a guy called Tony Blair. I don't know if you've heard of him. And then he became the first Catholic to be the ambassador from England since the Reformation to the papacy. Another person, my third cousin here on the right-hand side, Deputy Assistant Chief Raymond Goldbach, New York Fire Department. And his mother was a Mannion from Minla. She was a Byron from Minla. And our family connections there, he obviously was involved and thankfully survived 9/11. But while he and his men were going down to set up their command center, a neighbor of his mother's, her son, was just coming off the SWAT team for that night. And with everything that happened, they set up a perimeter around. So 2 people from a small little village called Bala in Minla, their sons were involved in one of the most momentous happenings in recent history. The guy on the left, that's his cousin on the right, through a shared Hansbury connection. So his great-grandmother was Ellen Hansbury, sent out as an orphan girl from Montbellier Workhouse. And they're coming back to Montbellier Workhouse to reconnect with the family. Another orphan girl, these are her descendants, Mary Ann Taylor from Castle Blakeney. So the family were the first family to make contact back in the 1990s, back to the Castle Blakeney Heritage Centre. So there's lots of families being reunited, sometimes through research and sometimes through connecting out. So I set up a few Facebook groups, social media, to reconnect people back to Minla, back to Montbellier. Surnames, that's my family's name, the Reynolds, but the Mordens and Blades were interconnected then to just kind of like bring people together. Not always successfully, but sometimes very much. The Mangan by DNA, so we got several hundreds and making the DNA connections there. And then wonderful Ballinamore and Newbridge to reach out to people, and that's I started because of Pat Abernathy, because Pat wanted to find her family, and lots of people who had done the DNA, they weren't the best at communicating back, so we figured let's everybody get together and make a commitment there. These are the students back in 2016. Thankfully I'm wearing a different shirt. Don't look anything like that today. Less hair. Wonderful group. And their teacher, Eamon Madden. I said to Eamon, do you think would any of them be, because I had just done my DNA, I was like really positive about it. And he said, let's ask them, which was a fantastic affirmation from Eamon. Eamon was the first person. I lived in Liverpool 2013, thinking of coming back, on the phone with Eamon, and he goes, what dates are good for you? And that was it. It was my first time working, and Eamon was so magnificent. And this is the class there. One of them is a Carty, and they did their DNA. And through all of that, then eventually, during COVID, I set up another East Galway genealogy group. So we just passed 11,000 members. Not all contributing, but quite a number do. And there's lots of stories being shared there, because people have family in Ballygard, have in Montbellier, and have in Gord, so bring them all together into that one place. And last but not least, the Lohans. There's Pat in Austin, Texas, and David Lohan. So David's family, the O'Briens, his mother was an O'Brien up the road, and the Lohans, David will forgive me for not remembering where they are, but David is living down in Cork. Amazing research that David has done. Lindsay Lohan, the actress, David has found out where she's from. I'll leave that for another video from David. So all of these together, hopefully, those are my final thoughts. Please do a DNA test. If you have done a DNA test, dig deep, reach out, reconnect, and get people together. So Gur Mila Mahagit for listening. And if you have any questions,
Martin, I just have a query about the ethnicity that comes up on
Yes.
Ancestry. When I did mine way back, I came out with a small percentage Turkey and Iran. The rest was Ireland. And then it changed to a small percentage in Spain. And now, like, I'm southern France and kind of northern Spain, but only a tiny percentage.
Yeah.
And I know it's insignificant, but why does it change because of more DNA samples coming in?
so they basically get a set of DNA people, and they use that as a base group.
Yeah.
And say, okay, these are all people who've got Connacht ancestry, these are all people who have Turkish ancestry and all of that. But you know how, like in opinion polls, plus or minus 3%?
Yeah.
So I love the fact I'm Iberian. So I was descended from King Malicious, yes. And all that disappeared. That was my base. Oh. But the thing about it is, that's to help. And it gives you a little bit, but if you have a very, very tiny amount, it's like, and yours is going to be Irish, more than likely.
But Americans kind of get a bit carried away when they might have a bigger percentage of other countries and that, but one of them, my cousin has Jewish, a small percentage Jewish, and she said, where did we get that from?
A friend of mine who's got 100% Irish ancestry, he came up with a trace Jewish as well. And it might be the reverse part, that a person who knows their Jewish ancestors way back, there might have been some Irish there as well, that they pick up as Irish. Doesn't mean that they're less Jewish, it just means that. So the ethnicity is an estimate, it's used to help out. There's been some cases where a person is given the DNA test, sends it away, and then they'll look at their ethnicity, and it's the totally wrong ethnicity. And it turns out there were babies swapped in the hospital. And they are raised culturally as one thing, and then their DNA comes up and they're another ethnicity. And there's a few stories that you can read online about that. And what I'm talking about surprises as well. Quite a few people have found local ancestry through their DNA. Did not know it from the paper trail, but from their DNA they found out that their great-grandfather, or even sometimes a parent may not be who they thought it was. And that is the hard thing, because that sometimes takes a lot of dealing with. But if you're going down to 2% or 4% or that, it's just that it'll change again. Like this last one, they say, oh, we got it really down now. And suddenly, like, I became Munster Irish rather than Connacht Irish. Like, and I know that previously doing that. So I ignore that part because I don't have. I look at who I match, and I look at the surnames, and I look at the places, and I reach out. If somebody has Galway in their ancestry, I reach a tiny segment. If they want to respond, they can. I ask them to come and join the group. They might have a little bit. Some people find that, but yeah, you're dealing as well. When we go back to 2% or 3% shared ancestry, that's 300-400 years ago. And we don't know all of our, because most of us here can only go back to about 1800. And that's only my 1790 reference to my great-great-great-grandfather is from his date of death, because there's no baptismals or anything else like that for him. I hope that answers the question there.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say was what I found very useful is, how our records were all destroyed way back, but I found a match on Ancestry, Richard Iadavio in New York, the whole family all Italians, and
Hey, buongiorno.
I looked up his family tree, and I see that he has the same great-grandparents as me, Mary Curley and Lawrence Lohan, that there was great-grandparents, and I said, this guy is copying somebody else's tree. So I got in touch with him, and one of his cousins had done the genealogy, and they had traced back. We found my great-grandfather's brother. We never knew he had a brother, Lawrence Lohan, who went to New York in the 1840s, and he married an Elizabeth Hannon from the area, but his marriage certificate had his parents and her parents' names, but we wouldn't have found those names in Ireland because the records were all gone, or they weren't registered or whatever. And we have the matches with them. But the funny thing, and this probably isn't even relevant to this, he is the only member of this huge family that I'm in touch with, and his wife, her parents are from Kerry, and their two children are. The whole thing has come round in circle. That his kids are
first generation,
Italian,
yeah.
Irish, Italian, or
Yeah.
American, whatever.
But that's the amazing thing about records. And Australia, if you are going to Australia, the Australian records share the parents' names. So there's a guy called Peter Martin. Peter looked up all the New South Wales records, and if you just Google Galway immigrant, EMIGRANT index, you get this huge list of names. And a lot of people will find somebody local to them on that. I didn't share that tonight because I was on a different focus and stuff. Any other questions from anybody else? I know it's kind of late, and apologies about that.
Just the companies will say that carry out the DNA test, do they share their databases? Or, do you know what I mean? If you go to ancestry.com there, whatever, is it just the database, or what they have then, do you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah.
do you know?
So they're making money.
Yeah.
So the more that you get directed towards them, the better for them. So they're not going to be sharing with family tree DNA, okay? Now, family tree DNA and my heritage have come together in a bit of a pact. And what my heritage did, because my heritage were far behind, so they allowed anybody who had done an ancestry DNA test to upload to them for free, going back for a few years. Now, they're going with this new model where they're going to just get the whole genome for €29. So therefore, you can't switch around. But you've done yours. A cousin has done theirs with family. How are you going to talk to each other? Well, that's where GEDmatch comes in. You upload yours to GEDmatch, cousin uploads theirs, and you get a number, and then you're able to compare. And that's what I did with Elizabeth. And then I see who we share in common, who we match in common. Now, there's a way then to see exactly which segment we match. So you saw that blue line down, and that's from my Byron side. So my third cousin, Pat Byron, in Alaska, in Kenai, Alaska, they had an earthquake the other day. Pat's okay. So they kind of shake all the time over there. So his DNA, and I knew that it had to be then from that side of the family. But if you do with Ancestry, somebody else do my heritage, somebody else do with family tree DNA, you can upload it then to compare those three. But they have to upload it as well. Does that answer the question? Yeah. One final question before we...
Martin, I noticed your uncle had 110,000 people on his tree. How did
Well, not quite 110,000, but it's close. So Martina, there's quite a lot. Didn't recognise you until now, sorry Martina.
Okay.
And I had your niece in class the other day, I think, as well. There was somebody in the family that said, oh, my auntie, or somebody. Anyways, I have been digging, and I love digging into the family tree. So I kind of go sideways.
Okay.
So what I do then is my cousin's family. I go back as far as I can go, because you never know what you might find.
But also, Martin, you know, if you accept a hint.
Yes, don't.
No.
Yeah.
Well, because they kind of put it in things like a half brother, and like we didn't have many half brothers in Ireland. A half brother, a half sister.
Yeah.
Whatever way they read into it, they kind of take them up as being half brothers
Yeah.
or sisters.
So you're talking about, you got an ancestry tree there,
Yeah.
and then you've got trends, and it says, oh, this might be your relation.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is just look and see, is that. I once really excited because I was trying to track one family. I found them on somebody's tree.
Yes.
I was like, great. I looked in at the tree and I just made it a little bit larger. And then I saw that that person that I thought they'd gone was one of 36 siblings
Yeah.
that was born to 12 different mothers in 3 different continents in a time period of 10 years
Yeah.
with the same father.
Yeah.
I was like, he must be. So again,
Yeah.
the trees, you are responsible for your own tree. There are some people that unfortunately do that. I look and let's say, if I get Hugh Lowen and I'm coming up and I want to put Hugh Lowen in, I just checked and see 25 Hugh Lowens. Is this Hugh Lowen born in 1878 one that I already have?
Yeah.
And sometimes people, oh, I've got a Hugh Lowen. Oh, you need to check and verify.
I
So
think
with
it
all of
probably
those.
comes from, Americans trying to make things fit. Like, my mother's
Yeah.
family
Well-
were nothing right with it. An American person has my great-grandfather down as being from Clifton.
Yeah.
No hope at all.
Well, it's like the Hineses that I showed there. Hines is a big name, Tom Hines. No problem around here. Certainly not in Wexford.
Yeah.
Not coming up from Wexford to here. And that's where you have to know your area. So those maps at the very start, that's where we have to start with. We know those places. And I was asking Mick there about a few different places, where are they? Because I don't know. So the thing is to ask questions of people who do know. And everybody here has a part to play in that. Because we all know a small bit. And that bit could be very precious to somebody who's looking for that. And if you keep it to yourself, as some people do, and wait until somebody asks you the question, well, you might be dead. So what I suggest is that, you know, you share it, and then if somebody's, boom, oh yeah, that's what I was looking for. But you have that segment, and what is precious is not the information that you have. What is precious is the connection that you can make then with people. And that little bit of a nugget of information, oh my God. Like when you were saying there about they have in America that thing. John and Anne, John Curley, my grandfather's uncle. So how we found that out, several of the cousins had done DNA but didn't respond. And then Steve, who would be my third cousin, twice removed, but he's my age because they married a little bit faster than we married. So Steve, he got in touch and he found a death cert in 1939 for John. And that death cert shared Patrick Curley and Mary Gordon, who are my great-great-grandparents, two great-grandparents. And that's how we knew, oh yeah, that's the way that it matched. And when I said to my cousin in Warrington, I found relations and they're in St. Mary's, he was like, that's the parish I grew up in. So like 70 years apart, we still had a connection in Warrington, and that's a huge coincidence there. So sharing information is the big thing. And that's why this group here, the Ballinamore Heritage Group, is fantastic. Because you're gathering that information. As you said, Matthew, you're recording it so that way another group can do that. And a few years ago in school in Ballinamore, we sat down with the grandparents, and there's lovely videos in the Facebook page of them sharing information. So record yourself, write it down, dig in and find the old pictures, write on the back of the old pictures, but not in a Sharpie. You know, don't be like the orange guy in the States. Don't put in a Sharpie because then it'll kind of like discolor it. But write down who they are and take a picture of the picture and send it around WhatsApp to family. And you never know what might come back. This whole plan. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll agree. Thanks a million, guys.